Hey, what's up? It's Jeffrey Lane. Today I want to talk about 4 things that could be causing your allergic reactions and inflammations to be worse when it's hot. If you're like me with multiple immune chronic illnesses, there's always different things to fight through in every season. And these are the kind of things that usually bother me during the summer, and it's not something that doctors usually talk about. It's not heat stroke, even though that's a big component. You do want your body to be able to release heat well enough that your body doesn't overheat. So for someone like me with eczema, that's pretty hard because my skin is so damaged that I can't really sweat. I wasn't able to sweat for most of my life. And so a lot of that heat, as well as the internal poison, toxins that the body's trying to get out through the skin, it would just kind of get stuck below the skin because the skin was so damaged it couldn't release the toxins. But also during the summer, your inflammations from your immune illnesses generates a lot of heat, and so your body needs to release more heat than a normal person would. Before we get to it, hit the subscribe button while we do the intro.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boy.
Number one, there's probably more particles and pollutants outside during the summer. It's not necessarily that the industries and cars are producing more pollution. It's that the heat from the summer brings up all the particles and the dust and the chemicals that are lying on the bottom of the floor and raises it up into the atmosphere and spreads it around. As most of us know, heated air rises up, and when that happens outside during the summer on a big scale, the air current brings up a lot of pollution and particles and chemicals, things you've heard about like PM 2.5 and PM 10. PM 2.5 is a smaller one. They're microscopic, but it still gets in your lungs and it can still cause allergic reactions and triggers and makes it difficult to breathe. That's usually what the air quality monitor warns people about, especially those who have sensitivities to air and breathing problems. So just behind our house, about a 15 or 20 minute drive, there's a mountain range, but during the summertime, a lot of that dust and current is being pulled up by the warmer air. We just can't see the mountain range at all. It's just purely covered by dust. It's completely brown, it's completely gray. So that's what happens. And during the wintertime, we can see the mountain range perfectly. So all that stuff is in the air, and all that air is dangerous. So if you're living in a hotter area, remember, try to have a mask like this that you can bring around and just try to stay indoors as much as possible. Number two, when you're inside, whether if you're in a car or inside your house, heat can cause a lot of toxins and chemicals to be released from paint, from plastics, from materials, from your carpet, even from your drapes. Basically, a lot of things that are used to build the house, modern day houses, and cars, car interiors, the plastics, the leather, the materials that are used to treat the leather. All of these things can and do release toxins. They're called VOCs, volatile organic compounds. These are things you gotta be careful for, even when you're inside. So on the car, sometimes you do need a mask or you need some kind of an air purifier, and that's why I did a whole tutorial about air purifiers and what kind you should choose for your house, because the house, when it's heated above a certain temperature, it's constantly releasing these toxins and these chemicals called VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. I do use a air monitor called the Wear Air Monitor here, and it does track VOCs. It doesn't break down exactly which chemicals and toxins are being released, but it does a pretty good job of tracking it. And you can often see the correlation of when the chemicals are rising, when the temperature is also rising. So if you need an air monitor to help you track that, Aware is one that I highly recommend, but I'm sure there are others out there. But VOCs, volatile organic compounds, they often don't immediately affect you, but if you're extra sensitive, if your immune system is extra reactive like mine, you might. But even if you don't feel some reactions initially, these chemicals and toxins are so small in amount that they kind of build up in your body over time. And so they don't usually cause immediate reaction, but they often do cause a long-term health issues as they build up in your body. And the third problem that heat can cause even when we're indoors is aggravate our own internal inflammations or inflammations on the body, on the skin. For those of us with eczema, asthma is often the inflammation and closure of the airways and the lungs, and your gut issues a lot of times are inflammations and swelling of your GI tract. So you got to try to keep your environment as cool as possible. I know keeping your AC on all the time is expensive, but if you can try to do that, not only will that sort of lower the VOCs and the chemicals that are being released from the house or the car, but it'll also just make your body temperature a little bit cooler and try to calm down that inflammation that's already going on. It's the same idea as when athletes sprain an ankle and it's swollen, well, that's inflammation, and they put ice on it just to try to cool it down. And it's also the same reason why I think, part of the reason why I often do better when I travel to Northern Europe, just because it is so much cooler there than it is in LA. So it might not completely heal my inflammations and reactions, but at least it'll sort of calm that down and help that inflammation cool down a bit, instead of aggravate it even more by adding more heat and making it harder for the body to deal with those reactions. The fourth trigger that heat can cause to make inflammations worse is just preventing you from sleeping and sleeping well. Most of us intuitively know this. When it's hot and humid, it's just really hard to fall asleep. But the body really needs to be a couple degrees cooler for it to fall asleep. And even for normal people, if you make a room cooler, they can fall asleep faster and fall into a deeper sleep than if it were in a hotter environment. So if you can keep your room cool when you're trying to sleep, that'll allow you to fall asleep faster and get better sleep. And sleep is so important for whatever illness, or even if you don't have an illness, just repairing your body. You really need to do that. And when you don't get sleep, obviously your condition gets worse. Just try to keep your room as cool as possible, and that's kind of goes along with just being indoors. The heat can still cause problems. So if you can keep the AC on, even if you try to make the room smaller so it doesn't spend as much energy, so you can keep the cost low, that's one of the things I try to do. I try to stay in this room as much as possible, instead of trying to heat the whole house. Instead of trying to cool the whole house, I just try to cool this room that I'm in. Hope you found that helpful. If you don't know my story, my name is Jeffrey Lin. I was born with multiple chronic illnesses, and they're beyond what doctors understand. They kind of identified it as severe eczema, severe asthma, and severe allergies, but that doesn't really describe it. I have internal inflammations everywhere. For 10 years I couldn't touch water. I've had my skin be cracked like lizard skin, and so that's the dry eczema. And I've also had the wet eczema, where I look like a burn victim and it's constantly leaking in my skin, or whatever's left of my skin would be leaking and stick to my clothes or my sheets, and then anytime I move, that would pull off. I react to weather that's coming several days away. That's why I'm making this video about weather and heat, because there are so many things that triggers, just not any single thing that causes problems for me. So on this channel, I'm sharing all my experiences and little tricks and hacks that I've figured out over the years, because again, doctors haven't really seen the kind of combination of immune illnesses and reactions and how severe I am. So, I've been figuring things out basically by myself for most of my life, and a lot of these tricks have helped other people. So here I am sharing it with you. If you found this helpful, please hit the subscribe button, and also comment below what things really aggravate your condition. What have you noticed? What patterns have you seen? And let's just try to help each other out. Thanks, guys.